What invention was so good that it actually can't be improved upon? Story 1. There is some room for improvement there, but for about 200 years the go-to method for creating usable energy was, and still mostly is, boiling water and turning a turbine with steam. Even nuclear power plants are basically just giant boilers. Story 2. Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, if we're counting food. You could argue that the Easter egg variation is an improvement, but otherwise, any other attempts to make them better have never outmatched the original. I'm sure they've changed the recipe over the years, and there is another conversation about that, but I don't want to open up that rabbit hole. Story 3. I found myself in Ticonderoga once, and I was really upset to learn that they didn't make the pencils there. I would have very much liked to have gone on a factory tour. Story 4. The canoe. It's remained relatively unchanged in design for thousands of years. There have been different materials and construction methods over the years, but they are all pretty much the same thing. A lightweight, human-powered watercraft that can carry a lot of stuff and be carried by a single person over large distances. Story 5. The magic bullet. Sure, the materials and build quality can be improved, but the basic functionality is so damn good. Quick to wash, get blended right into a convenient container ready to be stored if there is extra. It all goes in the washer. Work really well for 99% of my blending needs, and to top it off, it's inexpensive. Story 6. I suppose it depends on what is meant by an improvement. Simple hand tools like a hammer or chisel exist in many variations for specific tasks, but the basic shape hasn't varied much since they first started to be made of metal instead of stone. I'm personally fascinated by commercial products that have been in continuous production for over a century without being redesigned. The Brunton Pocket Transit and the Duluth Pack Hash 2 might be good examples. Story 7, I've got 2. Zip ties, cable ties. Super cheap to manufacture and incredibly strong and versatile. Water-activated packing tape, the kind used to tape cardboard boxes for shipping, often stronger than the box itself and impossible to tamper with without causing noticeable damage. Honorable mention, small block, Chevy Phi 8. Story 8. It has to be a very simple device. Anything with many moving parts will almost always be able to be optimized and improved. It would be hard to make a significantly better aluminum can, but building a significantly better passenger transport jet is just a matter of how much time and money you're willing to spend on R&D. Story 9. It's kinda hard to pick just one invention that's totally perfect and can't get any better, you know? Like, stuff keeps getting better because people are always coming up with new ideas and making things cooler, but some things are pretty much as good as they're gonna get for now. Take the wheel, for example. It's been around forever, and sure, we've made it fancier with better materials and stuff, but the basic idea hasn't really changed much. Some folks say things like levers and ramps are pretty much perfect too, because they work so well for what they're supposed to do. But hey, even if something seems totally perfect right now, who knows what the future holds, right? There's always room for new ideas and improvements as long as people keep on being creative and stuff. So yeah, things are pretty awesome now, but they could always get even awesomer down the road, you know? Story 10, the safety bicycle, or what we know as the bicycle. The geometry has changed very little since 1890. There have innovations in parts like derailleurs, specific frame shapes, various ways of construction. But talking about a single speed bike, they're very nearly the same. Story 11. Sewing machines have not changed in 100 years because there's little to improve upon. Higher-end new models have some nice bells and whistles and may work better for some very specific purposes, but the sewing mechanism is the same as your great-grandma's machine. With a little learning curve, a treadle, foot-powered sewing machine from 100-plus years ago will do 90% of sewing projects just as well as one you'd buy today. Story 12. The double triangle bicycle frame that arrived with same-sized wheels and a chain drivetrain, known as the safety bicycle, when it replaced the unsafe direct-drive penny farthing. People try to improve upon it all the time with things like hubless wheels, but they always come back to the double triangle. What is astonishing is that we had working locomotives with chains for a full 50 years before anybody came up with the bicycle concept as we know it. Story 13. The Langstroth beehive was created by Lorenzo Langstroth in 1851 and is the standard beehive that nearly all beekeepers amateur and professional use in North America and Australia. His discovery of bee space revolutionized beehives for the last 172 years. Bee space is a gap of 5/16ths of an inch, which is the height of two bees standing back to back. This instinctually prevents the bees from filling the gaps with wax. Story 14, AR-15 style rifles. Not that they can't be improved on, but technological advances in weaponry have not been great enough to render the AR-15 style rifles obsolete in 70-75 years. They are a wonderful in many different roles, and are the perfect base weapon platform in a huge variety of roles. Great rifle that won't be improved upon for decades until technology really expands past it. Story 15. I do not fully agree. By wheel, you have to include the tire. There is some massive improvement to be made there. Problem is that people don't want to pay for the better ones, so they buy some triangle branded ones. Yes, my uncle bought that. A week later, we got 4 inches of snow, which is nothing in Quebec. He couldn't get out of his parking. He had to be pushed to get stuck right away in the street. Meanwhile, with my good years, I parked my car right in the snowbank, and I left it without issue later on. I am in the automobile domain. Performance cars have one huge issue: putting the horsepower to the road. Tires don't grip enough. You have some grippier ones, but they zero tolerate sand, rock, or rain, and wear out super fast. And that is partially why it basically melt and glue itself to the road. We do need improvements, for grip, but also for environmental reasons. Tires cannot be recycled. Story 16. I believe it's a mindset to be evil. The love of money can be a byproduct, but not in all cases. Sometimes the person can't even help it. I had a childhood friend that's doing life in prison right now. I read his confession. The things he said sounded like he really believed it and thought if he told what he did, they'd put him in a program. Most criminals try to distance themselves from the crime. He casually talked about like he really though he was going home afterwards. This was far from the guy I've known since I was 8 years old. It's a case-by-cases basis on what constitutes evil. Story 17. Fire. Oldest invention by men, still useful even today. Today's people are trying to find new and powerful way with fire, like fusion, but for the basics of staying warm and cooking. The million-years-old invention hasn't changed. Story 18. The bottle. Whether it be plastic, glass, or otherwise, the invention itself is already perfect. It can store liquids, solids, and even gases perfectly with a lid to keep it there and to keep air from getting in. Anyone who tries to improve upon it will usually end up making it too confusing. Except for the bottle that can't be knocked over, I like that one. Story 19. One of the reasons why I quit the piano technician's business is because the acoustic piano hasn't really changed much in the past 100 years. Every once in a while someone tries to innovate with stuff like different material parts or add-ons like the silent system, but until someone manages to find a way to prevent the instrument from going out of tune, I'd say the acoustic piano is going to stay the way it is. Story 20, circa mid-2000s Google. Simple, clean, elegant design, minimal paid placements, no banner ads. Limited advertising in general, actually had great results in the first few pages. They used to be the pinnacle of what was possible in searching the internet. Story 21. I don't know if we can improve upon NVMe SSDs all that much. I mean, sure we can put more chips on them, make more and faster PCIe lanes, but I don't think we can do any better than the current modular system of putting NVMe right there on the board. Happy to be corrected, please. Story 22. Oh, we have so many. Simple things that you don't think about. Bowls and plates and cups all come to mind as examples. These things might come in different materials, but fundamentally they are the same and have been for thousands of years. Story 23. The knife. Before anyone jumps on my back because there's a gorillion different variations on the knife, I'll say that OP asks specifically for improvements, not variants, and besides being made out of better materials or with different techniques, the knife has stayed consistently the same as a hunk. Something tough with a sharp edge and a handle of some kind, whether it's a chunk of flint or a steel-edged titanium blade. I mean, there's 100 different uses for the thing, and it's never gone out of style as a tool and weapon. Story 24. The cheap rice cooker is a beautiful engineering marvel. Dish on a spring held down by a magnet. Magnets lose their strength as they get too hot, and you can get ones to specific temps. All you have is get one that does it at 100 C, and you have a device that turns itself off as soon as the rice cooks all the A through. Story 25. The body shape of a guitar. I feel like acoustic guitar bodies and the classic Fender Strat shape haven't really changed a lot. There are variations and manufacturers trying new things, Music Man with the Majesty and Kaizen, but the Strat shape just works and is iconic. That said, guitar players are not the most receptive to change, so... Story 26. I believe it is the bone folder used in leatherworking. I could wrong on which tool, I apologize, but I know there is a tool used in leatherworking, that the best tool for the job is still the bone one we made before we made civilization. Story 27, chopsticks. Once upon a time, someone decided they didn't want to burn their hands getting hot food into their mouth and saw two little sticks then thought, why don't I use these sticks to get the food into my mouth? Still, to this day, the easiest to make eating utensil, with offshoot eating implements, led to the invention of the skewer by those less skilled at using a pair of chopsticks. OMG, my meat fell, let me poke it instead. And later on, to the kebab, let me poke more stuff because why not? And other meats on a stick like yakitori, Japanese meat on a stick. Story 28 MIDI. MIDI data has been the same for so long, since 1983. They actually added more pins than needed when they invented it with the idea it could be improved upon. But it's been mostly the same since then. People have tried to improve MIDI with expressive controllers like Roly, but it never really caught on, and original MIDI data is still the most used. Story 29. The fingernail clipper. I once heard it remarked that the clipper was the greatest evidence of the superiority of Western culture. They could devote so much engineering to create a perfect device to solve such a mundane problem. Story 30. The violin. The reason Strad is so famous is because he perfected the violin in his golden era, the 1710 Wes, and that's it. People have been trying to do better ever since, and every curve, every thickness, everything was designed to absolute perfection. Annoyingly, but truly. Story 31. Technic's SL1200 turntable sort of fits the bill. It's been around since the 70s and has been the standard DJ turntable in clubs, etc. Since then, sure, Technics has made later models, but these are somewhat minor tweaks, and other companies have come up with competitors that all just basically emulate the Technics. It's built like a tank, easily repairable, has the basic features DJs need, and has timeless aesthetics. Story 32. The AR-15 platform. Really can't think of anything else, previous responses notwithstanding. I even came up with an improvement for the sling and stone, so there ain't much left. We make better mirrors, better wheels, better fire, though really the BIC is the height of perfection. Sorry, y'all. Toilets clog, the can be better, and the rise of bidets is a real threat to that position. Story 33. The human body. I mean, how the pound duck does it work? It's been around for a long, long time, and not much has changed. A few upgrades, patches if you like, but no real upgrades or major releases in that time. Science has been trying for centuries to replicate parts of the body, but failed to even get near even the basic parts. Then there's the brain, WTAF. Have you seen the latest robots that then have built to try and replicate the body itself, without the key parts? It's a bit like comparing a Lego-built house and the real thing. Never ceases to amaze me. Story 34, I feel like this applies to some early iPhones too. I have an 8, it's rugged. I've smashed the back and dropped it in salt water. It still works. The parts battery, screen, etc. are easy to replace. The memory is 64 GB, and I can't seem to fill it even with 2,000 plus photos and videos. It fits my hands well. The cameras and screens have gotten better on newer phones and memory, but these are all components that could theoretically be dropped into older iPhones or old iPhone designs updated to fit the newer components. Sometime around the iPhone 8, the improvements kind of become marginal. IMO. Story 35. Stove-top knobs. The traditional rotary type labeled 1, 10. You can find the correct knob, know if it's on or off, and set it to the correct setting blindfolded. They're also typically placed so that you don't constantly spill boiling liquid on them, causing them to malfunction or stop responding, unlike modern stovetop touch interfaces. I've never seen a touch interface improve on the knob design in any way whatsoever. Story 36. I very much disagree. We started with rolling things on logs, then someone invented the axle and a wooden wheel to go on it, and then we got suspension, and then pneumatic tires made of rubber that provide much more grip and take some of the bounciness away. And then those improved, so we had ones best for summer/winter/heavy-duty/racing/4x4, etc. Sure, the basic concept of rolling something hasn't changed, but it's like comparing a steam engine to a nuclear reactor. They both use steam, but one is far, far more advanced than the other. Story 37. Fishing hook? Yeah, there are variations, but as a device that allows bait to be added to it securely and designed to hook a fish in its mouth, it's pretty spot on. Notable variations. Baitkeeper hook has barbs up the shank, great for keeping bait on. Circle hooks, designed to hook in the corner of the mouth versus the roof or lip. Better hook hold, cleaner and less potential damage to the fish. Treble hooks used on lures, just 3 hooks welded together. And my favorite, barbless hooks, the most humane hook available as long as it's sharp. Story 38. Maybe a Tunisian Afghan crochet hook, crochet hooks and knitting needles. Same basic shape, design, methods of use since they were created. The only things that have changed have been making handles different to personal user preferences, using different materials to customize them to user desires, or take advantage of local and treasury available raw materials, then making them longer, shorter, or thicker for use with differently sized threads or yarns. You don't really need to do any of that to use them though, as the hook or needle could still be used, and it would create a looser or tighter stitch that, while it might be easier and faster if gauged closer to your chosen yarn or thread, the basic hook and needle tips would remain the same, just sized up or down in scale depending on the fiber you're working with. Story 39. IDK, if this sub is gun-friendly, but the recoil-operated loading system that John Moses Browning invented for the 1911 pistol has been the standard for well over 100 years. Other companies like Glock have made advancements in magazine, frame, action, and trigger design, but the Glock still utilizes the same recoil system to cycle through rounds. Also, the Russians have made countless external improvements to the AK platform, but the internals have stayed the same since 1947 with no need for any improvements. Story 40. I'd actually be inclined to disagree on this one, as each concept has been refined again and again. For example, the earliest forks were essentially used to spear something and hold it in place while it was cut. This sort of fork still exists, and maybe even gets dragged out of the rarely used implements drawer in the average kitchen around Christmas. It took centuries for a tool that was focused on the preparation of food to become an implement used to eat food. Even when that happened, the fork did not stop advancing, and many specialized solutions to specific eating challenges came, and often went, over the centuries. Today, the average set of silverware will include at least two kinds of forks, one likely adapted for the task of eating a salad, and the other for nearly everything else. Knives make this even more clear. They are everything from a clever to a hypothetically sharp implement for spreading softened butter. Even the humble chef's knife, commonly also called a butcher's knife, has been refined and then produced specialized branches. Yes, one can use a cleaver for nearly any cutting task in a kitchen, even if many of them are quite inconvenient. But we also have narrow, flexible knives for cutting through joints, heavy curved ones suitable for long, drawn slices, those with less pronounced curves that are better at chopping, short, stubby ones for detail cuts, great long ones for slicing meat, others for bread. The essential concept might not have changed, but these tools have evolved much over the years. They're still evolving. Story 41. The knuckle is what it's called. It really is quite a cool invention, and the only improvement they've made on it is a high-strength version to be able to pull more weight. The shape and function is quite genius, though. Changing one if it breaks is a big pain in the ass, though. 75 to 80 pounds, awkward, smooth shape, and you need to hold it perfectly in place while you slide into this tongue piece of steel that opens and closes it.